Okay, friends, this is day 11, and today we are in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and we are building on what Alex talked about yesterday. Alex did a great job of setting up one of the early controversies in the church, controversy that seems totally foreign. It is totally foreign to us. It seems like it would have nothing to do with us in the 21st century, but as Alex set up yesterday, it has a lot to do with us. It's the question of, can disciples of Jesus, people who are walking in the way of Jesus, is it okay for them to eat meat that's sacrificed to idols? We won't recap all of that, but if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it yesterday. What Paul says is, look, it's fine. You're totally free to eat meat that's sacrificed to idols. But if you doing that adversely affects the relationship, your relationship with people, or your example to people, then you shouldn't do it. So a way to frame it up is, what are we supposed to do? Love God and love people. Eating the meat sacrificed to idols does not affect your relationship with God. It's great. But if it hurts people, you should forgo your right to eat that meat. In the next chapter, getting ahead of ourselves, Paul sums it up this way in chapter 10. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. There are some things that it is okay for you to do, but it doesn't build up other people. Therefore, we forgo those rights. What does Paul talk about in chapter 9? He talks about a right that he is giving up. He's talking about an example in his life of a right he is giving up. Doing this would not negatively affect his relationship with God, but it would inhibit his ability to be in ministry to people, so therefore he forgoes the right. What is that right? Okay, well, the first two verses, Paul really sets up his authority. He reminds people, look, I'm an apostle. Not everybody considers me to be an apostle, but you know that I'm an apostle because you talking to the church in Corinth. You wouldn't even be walking in the way of Jesus if it weren't for my ministry. I mean, apostle is like the upper echelon of what it means to be a follower of Jesus at the time. Like this is the top of the pyramid. Only a handful of people are considered apostles. These are the people who actually walked with the living Jesus. There are questions about his apostleship because he didn't meet Jesus until after he'd been resurrected. But he's saying, but look, you know the authority that I have in the church. And therefore, what would have been obvious to everybody at the time is that certain rights came along with that. He said, I'm going to forgo those rights. One of those rights that Paul had was he had a right to be compensated for his work in the church. You may say that doesn't affect me now, but it does affect me. He says, look, Paul says, look, and he gives some examples. I have a right to be compensated for my work in the church, but I'm going to forgo that right. And we found out earlier he's a tent maker. That's how he's making his money. I'm going to make my money outside of the church so that I can serve the church for free. Now, he's not saying that everybody has to do that indefinitely, but he's saying, I know that at this point, even though it is lawful for me to receive a paycheck from the church, it doesn't affect my relationship with God to do that. I think that I better serve others by not taking a paycheck from the church. Why? Verse 18. What's my reward? Like, what am I going after here? What's the win? That in my preaching, I may present the gospel free of charge. So therefore, I do not make full use of my right. In the gospel, he has full use, he has full right to receive money from the church. But he doesn't do it. Why? So that he can present the gospel free of charge. So that he can just preach without it being tied to how he provides for himself. And I will tell you, I'm not going to go deep into this today. There is a huge temptation for those of us who work in the local church to get our ministry and what we feel called to say and how to teach and all this stuff all intertwined and tied up with how we provide for ourselves and how we provide for our families. It can get really tricky. And Paul says, I know that in Corinth, I am going to be better served if those two things are separate. And I do not receive any money from the local church, and I just preach free of charge. If you don't think that every pastor that you know hasn't thought about this at some point, then just know now, we all think about this, right? And how can my heart not be too tied to the paycheck so that I am free to preach the gospel? Paul says, I'm just going to separate the two things. And then big picture, what does he say next verse? For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. There's a lot that we could say here. Big picture. He says, look, because of my position as an apostle, I am in a place where I have the right to be served. But instead, I'm going to serve. Where does he get that from? Where does he get that from? Jesus has the ultimate right to be served. People should be bowing down at his feet, washing his feet. He flips the script. I have the ultimate right to be served, but instead, I'm going to serve. That's the posture that we take as followers of Jesus. It's the posture that Paul took as a follower of Jesus. I'm not in it in this life to be served. I am in it in this life to serve. So how can you flip that script in your life? Maybe even today. Maybe even today, there's someone in your life that you're saying, look, I am looking more at how they can serve me than how I can serve them. Flip that script as a follower of the way of Jesus. Less and less concerned, less and less concerned, less and less concerned with how I can be served. More and more concerned with how I can serve. If you're anything like me, it's a miracle when I get that right. May the Holy Spirit have that kind of effect in our hearts and our minds, where we become people less and less concerned every day with being served, and more concerned, like Paul is, with serving others. God bless you, friends. Keep with it. We'll see you next time.